What's up? Welcome back to the Beast Lab. Today I want to talk about the new 2021 NCAA FaceOff rules because they are going to trickle down eventually to Federation. But the problem is we're not exactly sure what we can and cannot do. So what I'm going to do is break down what the rules say now compared to what they used to say, the problem with the gray areas that have been developed, and what we believe, based on our conversations with rules committee members, college coaches, etc., what we believe is going to be the way that they're going to officiate the face-off in the NCAA starting this spring. So first, let's go down the rule book. So the rule book has just come out, and basically a lot of people are highlighting certain sections and saying, oh, what's this or what's that? Let's be clear. When you look at the new rules, they're essentially exactly written the same as they were before. The only difference is you have to face off standing neutral grip. Standing neutral grip is defined now as a right hand is supinated, underhand. The left hand is pronated, okay, overhand. This is not allowed. It has to be like this. Okay, great. So, based on what we've seen in the rule book and the literature that we've seen, the verbiage is very clear. It's exactly the same. You go to the ball's down second, okay, the players line up first, ball goes down second. The mechanics of the officials are all the same. A visible set call, 2 to 3 steps back, blow the whistle. If you have 3 infractions in the first half as a face-off man, then you have to serve a 30-second penalty. So everything is pretty much the same. Now here's where people are getting hang-ups. Oh, you can't clamp on somebody else's stick. Yeah, you were never allowed to clamp on somebody else's stick. And what they mean by that is you can't pin a person's stick or you can't stop their progress. That was written before. The other rule, you only allowed 1 step and then you have to redirect the ball. Yeah, that was already written. These are not new rules. The problem is they weren't enacted. Right? We all saw a million college lacrosse games where someone would clamp and turn 3 to 4 steps and exit. That wasn't allowed by the rules. The rules said very clearly it had to be in 1 move, which is defined as 1 step. Still exact same verbiage. So from what we understand, if we were to just read the rule book right now, it says that if I go into the ball and I acquire the clamp, I have to immediately drive out of there, and within 1 step, the ball has to pop out. Right? Now remember, the original reason in 2014 that they said the 1-step rule was for carrying the ball in the back of the stick. So now when we think about 1-step rule, it means how many steps before I can go from clamp to exit. Okay? So that's the problem. In 2014 it was written that way. Now we need it to make sense in 2021. So based on the rule book, we think, okay, if I clamp and I take 1 step, as I'm taking that step, ball's got to come out. That's totally fine. We get that. The problem is we're also hearing from different people about what that really means. So for instance, Mr. Abbott gave a very good speech. IMLCA gave a presentation about how this is going to be done. The problem is there's still gray area, right? And he used terms like you have to redirect it immediately. Is that 1 step? What's immediately? So that means if I go to Florida, immediately means before I finish my clamp, I got to rip it out somewhere. And if I go to New York, I'm allowed to take 3 steps. No one knows, okay? When I clamp, I can't lift my head up and look. I'm assuming, right? Because before we weren't allowed to do that. So who knows? And that's the problem. The problem with our sport with this position is never the face-off guys. It's always how the rules are written because there's a ton of gray area. And then it leaves a wide range of interpretation based on which official you have. And that's what drives face-off guys nuts because 1/3 of our success is based on how the officials are calling it that day. And unfortunately, it's similar to a balls and strikes situation. Where is the umpire's strike zone, right? So in our sport, whether I'm playing in California, New York, or Florida, if I step out of bounds, I'm out of bounds and it gets called every single time. The ref never says, well, you got to have a whole foot out of bounds or you need to step out twice. No, it's always out of bounds. We all know that. It's a black and white rule. So, in lacrosse, on face-offs, if we made the rules black and white, it would make the officials' job easier because they could catch on real quick. It would make the coach's job easier because right now college coaches are saying, I literally don't know exactly what to tell these guys. And it would certainly make the kids' life easier, that's for sure. So here's what I propose. When we're officiating this face-off from now on, okay, we know that by rule you're only allowed to take 1 step. So make it a hard 1 step. You see a second foot hit the ground after the clamp, you call it every single time. You don't warn them. You don't let it go this time. You call it every time. Because when we talked about it in the past, if you look at the other videos in my playlist, guys who are doing this correctly are not really going to have to worry about the 1-step rule stuff, right? If we're taught correctly, we're leaning in and distributing our weight, and then we're pushing off and we're exiting here, or we're throwing the ball through our legs. The guys who are going to have a lot of problems, based on what we're seeing, are these guys, right? Now I'm stuck. So if I take, in order for me to gain my balance again, that's going to happen. That better be called, right? That has to be called. So make it one step and one step only. Very easy. Every official knows how many steps are one step. So you made your job easy there. The other side of this is to make sure that when guys are facing off, that they're not making contact with their opponent from the wrist above. If you make contact here or with your butt end or any of that stuff, you call it dead. It's real easy. Give yourself hard spots in which to call this stuff. Now the face-off S&G, I like the rule change because I think it's going to be quicker face-off. It's going to be way easier on these kids' bodies. We already, as I've been working with them all fall and winter, they've all been saying the same thing. They're like, I could take reps like this all day long. On a knee, it was a lot rougher on my body. Good, okay? We're getting longevity out of our athletes, but we have to know what the rules are. So I've been told by certain college coaches, when it comes to the one-step rule, it means you can't take any steps. So they're assuming you can't rotate at all counterclockwise. Okay, I would be fine with that. We can adapt to that. Offensive only, backdoor, or when you get it, you go through the legs, GTL. That's actually a more applicable exit than a defensive exit now anyway, because defensive exits are really easy to shovel. So that's fine, but say it, right? So that's our problem right now. So if I were a face-off guy, here's my recommendation. Make sure you're not kicking your feet back, obviously. Make sure you have a vertical wrist so you can properly come up under the wall, and you don't have to worry about the one-step rule. That's out of there now. Work on making sure you're distributing your weight, and only work on your offensive, backdoor, and TTL exits. That'll make sure that you don't have to worry if they're going to allow defensive exits. Because like I said, all the FOA guys know that we've been working with, defensive exits aren't nearly as useful as a TTL now. So when you guys are battling, one, don't get into a 50-50 lockup because that means you're doing this whole thing wrong. Okay, but two, get in and get out and work on those three exits. Now, if we find out at some point during the season they're allowing a defensive exit, great, you can always go back to that if you really want to, but at least you are sharp on the other exits. The best thing you can do for yourself right now as a face-off guy to protect yourself with this wide gray area nonsense is to make sure you're doing things sharp, right? Weight distribution. Look at the video that I made on proper exits and proper foot spots for your feet and your foot placement in your stance pre-whistle, because it'll help you distribute your weight so you get in and out and not have to worry about taking too many steps. Okay, and like I said, I keep reiterating this. If you're rolling your wrist over and you're kicking your feet back, you're gonna get stuck in lockups. You're gonna get absolutely murdered this spring, okay? If you don't believe me, do your thing and then you'll run into an FOA guy, okay? So what you wanna do is make sure you're being sharp on your weight distribution, sharp on your exits. And then everything else will kind of flow. You'll be fine. Whenever you're countering somebody, don't use your butt end, okay? Because you're gonna just ask to get something illegal called on you. Lift like a normal human being with the head of your stick, okay? Just like you would on defense. Lift here, lift the gloves, okay? Come around underneath, lift the gloves here. Keep it real easy for the referees to see. Now, from an official standpoint, if you're an official and you actually care what my advice, that would be great. Make it black and white for yourself. This spring, you'll have to talk to the athletes beforehand. Now look, federation rules are not S&G only. Now, if you're a high school coach and you have a face-off guy who has dreams of playing in college, it would behoove you to tell him to learn how to face off standing neutral grip. Unless you only care about him facing off on a knee and winning a couple extra reps, that's fine, but everyone's gonna be facing off standing this time next year. So everybody has a little bit of a duty this year to get it right. So if you're a coach, ensure that your guys are learning SAG correctly and that you're facing off correctly. If you're an official, make things black and white. If you're a college official or if you're in the Founders League or MIAA or Interact and you're doing college rules anyway in high school, make it very black and white. Talk to the face-off guys before each game. Tell them, one step, if I see a second foot hit the ground, I'm calling it no matter what, okay? If I see you rip a guy on the arm or make contact with above the wrist, I'm calling it. And what you're gonna have right off the bat is they understand the expectation, they know where they're at, and when they go out there, it'll be consistent. If we have certain refs allowing whatever in different states, it's gonna be an absolute mess. So that would be my recommendation. And if from the rules committee standpoint, look, I know my opinion doesn't matter, but I just think that if we can tighten up the language and make this face-off position more black and white for the officials to call easily, there's less room for interpretation. We don't want to look like the NFL, where for the last 40 years they couldn't figure out what a catch was. And that's what this is starting to become, because there's way too much interpretation. Okay? So that would be my recommendation for all the factions. I think learning how to do this correctly, learning how to fish it correctly, and then also being able to tighten up the language would help everybody. I do think SNG is going to be a faster, quicker face-off for people to watch. This first year in college, it's going to be a little sloppy because people are basing a lot of this stuff on theory. But next year and the years on, I think this is going to be a much more refined style of face-off. So there's my recommendation. Hopefully this can kind of clear some things up for you guys, and I wish you the best of luck this spring.